Hey guys, it's Nick. Welcome back to the channel. The world is crazy out there. Whether it's World War III, the rise of AI, pick your disaster, a lot of you guys might be a little bit concerned about food security. It's definitely a real thing. We didn't see tremendous shortages during COVID. For the most part, food was still available. But even just not being able to get every single item that you wanted really freaked some people out. So one component to a food security plan is to do a garden. But I want to start this by saying this is not the first thing that you do. This is not the most important. If you don't have a 30-day supply, a real legitimate 30-day supply of food that you can eat on hand, I'd recommend you start with that. If you don't have an emergency fund where you're at least 1 month ahead, most people will tell you somewhere between 3 months and a year. I know that's outside the realm of possibility for a lot of people. But if you're not a little bit ahead, you don't have some kind of financial cushion, guys, it costs money to do this. It's a bit of a myth that you're going to save a lot of money by gardening, at least at first. To be honest with you, there's a good chance you're going to fail entirely and you're going to get basically no food. Which brings me to my other point. It is important to start practicing this stuff before things go really wrong. In the middle of a disaster is not the time to learn how to start seeds, how to sucker tomatoes, how to prepare soil. That's not when you want to do it. So, assuming you have a little bit of a cushion, you've got the basics of preparedness taken care of, then I would say, now let's talk about practicing some skills for the future. Because long term, you're probably not going to store decades worth of food. If something bad ever really did happen, you're going to want to be able to produce food, at least in some capacity. And I think understanding the limitations of your setup, your land, very important to that. You may find out that you're not able to raise as much food as you think. It's not as easy as most people think. All right, with that said, let's get into our setup and talk about the basics of seed starting. All right, guys, so I'm joined here with my lovely wife, Laura.
Hello, YouTube land.
And we're going to talk about the actual process of starting seeds. Presumably, if you guys are watching this video, you're at least interested in the topic, may not have a ton of experience. I would recommend for online seed catalogs, go into Johnny's Selected Seeds. They have a really great selection. I've had a lot of good luck. To be honest with you guys, I think for like homeowner, homestead scale, doesn't really matter as much as it does with a commercial operation. An 80% germination rate versus a 70% germination rate, seeds are cheap. It doesn't really matter that much. One thing you're going to want to know is the back of the seed pack. If you're going like the hardware store, farm store route, that's going to tell you for your zone, area of the country. So we're Southwest New Hampshire. We're zone, I believe it's 5B, which isn't super critical for annual crops like this, but it's going to show you a nice map, give you a suggested range of planting dates. They're typically pretty broad. Take the time, go online, look up for your zip code or as close as you can find to it, the average last frost date, because a lot of these will tell you 6 to 8 weeks or 4 to 6 weeks before last average frost date. So knowing that's important. So in our case, we're going to be doing basil, lavender, Brussels sprouts, sweet peppers. It's a multi-pack. Thai hot peppers, tomatillos, which even being this far north, they grew great last year. We got a pretty impressive yield, more than we could use, to be quite honest with you. And then I did 2 varieties of regular tomatoes. One's regular size, 1 pound fruits. So one's determinate, one's indeterminate. We'll talk more about that later. And then we've got some cherry tomatoes that we're going to sow as well. That's not all we're planting this year, but this far out, we're early April. Our last average frost date's about May 19th. That's what we're ready to start at this point. So, it's pretty basic. Let's go ahead and show you that part of the process. Okay guys, so Laura diligently planted every one of these cells. We're doing 2 flats of identical items so that we can show you guys the side-by-side of the heat mat and also for our own purposes to see what kind of difference we get in germination and growth rate between the two flats. We went ahead and used this Burpee organic seed starting mix. This stuff is made from coconut coir. Some stuff is made from peat moss. I don't really have a strong preference one way or the other. You can see the various things we planted. So we got our tomatoes, our tomatillos, got some lavender in there, Brussels sprouts, hot and sweet peppers, and basil. We're definitely going to plant a wider variety than this, but these are the things that we tend to need to start this early. We did go with 72 cell trays, which means that the plugs are pretty small. A lot of people would use this like for starting lettuce, not typically tomatoes. Personally, I find that we transplant those into small pots as an intermediate step before planting them outside anyway. So don't really see a huge drawback to using these. It gives you plenty of separate cells so you can get plenty of different types and quantity of seeds started. So that's the process in a nutshell, guys. It's fairly straightforward. We're going to go ahead and water these and let them start growing, and we'll have a follow-up video here in the next week or two.